Thanks. I'm not sure if what I've got to say should belong in the next part of our discussion, which Margaret's going to introduce, I think, because it relates to the debate about the role of fundamental research. However, I'd like to link it to the remarks of Lord Sainsbury and of Ben Martin. Ben gave a very good summary of the qualities which Keith Pavitt contributed to our work. When I say our work, I mean people all over the world working in this field. And there would be no point in me repeating what Ben said so well. However, I'd like to take up one point that he made, which is about the role of argument in research. Because I think quite rightly many people would say they learned a lot from arguments with Keith. And that these were genuinely conducted in a good spirit and led on the whole to constructive outcomes. And since I worked with Keith for almost 40 years, I had probably my fair share of arguments. And I wouldn't say every day, but certainly I think probably every week we had an argument. They ranged over a huge area of topics. But of course one of them was about fundamental research. And I first came across Keith in this connection in 1963, 40 years ago, when I was part of a group headed by Sven Nilsson, one of the outstanding Swedish economists of his day. And Sven Nilsson was the chairman of a group formed by OECD to write a booklet on science, economic growth, and government policy. And the OECD decided that they would send a young engineer to join this group. And this young engineer, of course, was Keith Pavitt, who had recently joined the OECD. He went to the OECD very largely because he wanted to work in an international environment. When Keith joined the group, some of us were a bit worried that he might give an impetus to our group away from fundamental science, away from the importance of basic research towards the needs of industry. And of course, Keith did impart a great deal of useful knowledge and experience and ideas on the role of industrial innovation. Few people have done as much as he did to research and publish on industrial innovation. However, what we found was, almost immediately, in fact, about midnight on the first day that we got together, it was in June, and it was by the light of the midnight sun, which is lovely in Stockholm at this time of the year. And we were walking, I and Keith and Sven Nilsson, in Stockholm, and Keith made it perfectly clear that he strongly supported the role of fundamental research. And I was personally very relieved to find that he did feel that way about fundamental research, and so was Sven Nilsson, because our booklet was called Science, Economic Growth and Government Policy. And although we certainly brought in the theme of industrial innovation, we also, partly because of Keith's insistence, emphasized the continuing importance of fundamental, curiosity-driven research. And as far as I know, Keith was completely consistent in that position throughout his life. And in fact, in his later years, he returned to it more strongly than ever. And some of his best work towards the end of his life was on that theme. So that was something we didn't argue very much about, but agreed about very largely. He also agreed on the importance of trying to measure the contribution of fundamental research. and in the role of indicators of research and innovation activity generally. He was a strong supporter of all kinds of work to improve our statistics. But of course, he knew perfectly well the limitations of our statistics. He knew that when we measure the number of papers published by people, the number of times they were cited, there are all kinds of qualifications one has to make in using such statistics. And it's a great pity that Diana Hicks is not here with us this afternoon as she originally intended, because I think with the exception of our chairman Ben, Diana knows more about statistics of scientific publication than anyone else in the world. And I would have loved to ask her why she thinks the numbers of papers published by scientists working in industry has been falling in the United States and, as far as I know, in most European countries for the last 5 years. I would like to hear her views as to whether I'm right in believing that this is a fact, and if I am, what explains this trend. And I hope that this will be taken up in the debate this afternoon. It seems to me it's quite an interesting issue in the debate. Keith's contribution, of course, was not only on the economics of fundamental research and the value of fundamental research, it was also on the whole field of competition, innovation policies and technology policies. And I'm sure he would have been heartened by what Lord Sainsbury had to say about the intentions of the government in relation to innovation policy and what they have already done in beginning to reverse the decline in fundamental research in this country. Keith believed very firmly in cooperation between universities and industry. But he also believed in the importance of freedom of publication everywhere. And one of the battles that he and I fought as joint editors of research policy was to ensure the publication of a brilliant paper by Ben and his colleague John Irvin, which was a comparison using all the indicators which they could get hold of, a comparison between various centres of fundamental research in astronomy. And Ben and John showed, I think convincingly, that Cambridge University in this country came out best in the world in this comparison, but in particular it came out better than Manchester at this time. And this wasn't very welcome news in some places in Manchester. And pressure was brought to bear on the Vice-Chancellor at that time of our university, Professor Wilkinson, not to publish this paper. And there was quite a battle about it. And we were fortunate that the Vice-Chancellor stood by our attitude. We got new referees, we had it re-refereed, the paper, and we had very positive recommendations from referees from several countries that we should go ahead and publish. And we did, and I think it was a very important paper indeed. And it showed both the value of empirical work of this kind and of the statistical indicators that we had, imperfect though they are, and the imperfections were recognized in this paper and indeed formed a substantial part of the analysis in the paper. So that was one more issue where Keith and I were completely agreed, and I'm happy to say it had a very positive outcome, which I still think is significant for the debate this afternoon, which I'm looking forward to very much. I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful for everyone to come here on this occasion. Thanks very much.